Welcome to A Christian Reacts, and today we're going to be reacting to Bricky's Every Single Warhammer 40k Faction Explained Part 2. Please go support his channel, and the original video will be in the description. Thank you. Welcome to A Christian Reacts, and before we get into the video, if you like what you see, please consider a like and subscription, as that really helps the channel out a lot. Also share it to all platforms, even to yourself. That really helps the channel out in the video. Also, I do a Warhammer 40k Lore in the Bible shorts, so if you want to check that out, that'll be in the shorts section. And in the future, I'm looking at maybe doing Trench Crusade shorts as well, because if you guys don't know, I also react to Trench Crusade videos as well. And to the next thing, I will be doing the revamped version of this that Bricky just did, as you guys were letting me know in the last video. So I will be doing that, but a commenter made a good suggestion that I finish this up and then I move on to that. And I think it was a good suggestion, so that's what I'm going to do. And also, I will be reacting to Feel the Paint after that one. After Bricky's revamped version, I will be doing a Feel the Paint react video for that, for Trench Crusade. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get into this video.
Hey all, this is part 2 in a 2-part series on the Warhammer races. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, we do the Imperium of Man. You can check that out in the description, and I would highly recommend you watch that to get context for this episode. If you already have, go ahead and keep on watching. So after an entire episode of nothing but humans, we can now talk about chaos, which involves humans again, but a little bit less. We also got demons and shit.
I just felt someone grab my ass. What? Like hard, Nick.
So, as I've mentioned many times before, we've discussed the warp, the immaterium, the hellish landscape, the purgatory dimension realm between the material realm of our existence. Now, in the warp, it's terrifying, horrible. There are demons everywhere. Things are crazy. All your minds and thoughts and emotions get projected there. It is both formless and empty. It is vast and tiny. It obeys the laws of time and physics while simultaneously does absolutely nothing of the sort. It is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable, eldritch, horrifying shit. And there are 4 gods that permeate in chaos and the warp. These are...
Okay, so check this out. So if you guys don't know, I do bring biblical scriptures that pertain to the lore or what's going on in the video. Okay. I forgot. Oh, past 2 videos I've been forgetting to say that. So anyways, I'll put it up on the thumbnail. So Job 24:17. For the morning is to them even as the shadow of death. If one know them, they are in the terrors of the shadow of death. Now I'm going to find the verse that says the land of the shadow of death as well, which is interesting.
Are the 4 major chaos gods. And if we wish to learn about chaos, we need to learn about each and every single one of these chaos gods. First up, we have Khorne, and he is the easiest. Khorne is your classic Satan. He is...
So, I did a short on this if you want to check it out, and I would liken him to the god Chamesh, or Kamesh, or Kamash, however you want to say it, who is also related, or not related, is Moloch. Right? Or Moloch. Sorry. My goodness. And he was definitely, let's just say blood was required. We'll just say. And also of innocence, we'll just say. Anyways.
Is all about anger, murder, fighting, blood, guts, death. You ever heard the term blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne? That's Khorne. The whole idea is that he is all about the fury and strength of battle. He doesn't care where blood comes from, so long as blood is flowing. He wants to...
And ketchup. Lots and lots of ketchup.
Fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death, 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 death. That is Khorne. Very simple to understand. Next up, you have Tzeentch, and Tzeentch is the god of change. However, the god of change, permeates in so many different other ways. He's the most eldritch of all the demon gods. He has this weird way to always be plucking at the strings of the universe. He's always conniving and scheming and doing his best to cause as much little bullshit as he can.
Oh, come on.
Tzeentch is unknowable. Everything that makes sense, he will and won't do. Every future.
So real quick. So this is the land of the shadow of death, which is interesting. There's also, Jesus talks about the outer darkness as well, which is interesting. But Isaiah 9:2, the people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death. Now, if you remember, there's terrors in the land or in the shadow of death, right? So very interesting. So dwell in the land of the shadow of death. Upon them hath the light shined. So there is this land. And there's many verses that talk about, that say the land of the shadow of death. So there you go.
And setting and every type of destiny or fate is all foretold and also changeable. It is set in stone while also completely random. He knows what everything is going to happen.
And he's got a tongue for a pee-pee. Anyways.
And also,
or that could be a vajayjay, a very angry one. But anyways, I better stop.
None of it's going to happen. You would ask Tzeentch a question. That question leads to 3 more questions. And those questions lead to the heat death of the universe, which asks 4 answers to those questions. And then he thinks to himself, what are questions even really? And are you even asking the questions? Or are you simply giving paths to answers and other horse shit? Tzeentch is just, I'm gonna
Nope. I just changed the question and I changed the answer.
fuck with stuff. He is yes and he is no. He is the understanding and he is complexity. He is unknowable. And that's what the God of Change is about. Very bizarre. And he likes birds a lot. I don't know why. Next up we got Papa Nurgle. Papa Nurgle, he loves you for who you are. Probably not. He will murder you just the same. But Papa Nurgle is about rot.
So real quick, Tzeentch, I would like it to the god Janus, right? And he's the Roman god of beginnings and transitions, or Proteus, Greek god, and other deities who represent cyclical changes like seasons or life, blah blah blah. And he was the two-faced god, right? He had 2 faces to him, right? He would tell you one thing and do another type of thing. So, but anyways, I digress.
Pestilence, death, and decay. He is the end of everything. Him and Tzeentch do not like each other very much because where Tzeentch represents change and adjustment, Nurgle represents stagnation and death. He is all about miasma.
And real quick, there is a literal god in 2 Kings called Nergal, who's the god of disease, and he's called the god of inflicted death. And his name is Nergal, Nergal, not, Nurgle. But anyways, I believe that's probably where they got it from. So it's in 2 Kings if you want to check that out. And it's Nergal, Nergal. So you can look that up in the wiki.
And pestilence and large bloat and pus
Wikipedia, I should
and
say.
organs and people just being sedentary, sloth. He is the idea that everything will rot and decay and die. Nothing is certain besides decay and...
But he believes he's given his followers blessings, right? He thinks he's doing the right thing. So, but anyways.
death. All of us will end up the same way, and broken down through just sheer never-ending decomposition. So the joke that Nurgle always loves you is generally because of that, because we all end up the same. We all rot, and we all die and wither. That's Nurgle, and he's got a general theme of course, pestilence and different kinds of diseases and sickness and things of that nature. That's generally Nurgle. He's pretty easy to understand as well, and He chunk. Finally, we have the youngest of the Chaos gods, and that is Slaanesh, also known as the Prince of Pleasure or the god of unspeakable excess. Slaanesh is generally referred to with sex, but it's not only sex, it's just that's a good avenue if you want to make stuff. Slaanesh is just the idea of the senses of the body being cranked to not just 11, but more like 17. So we'll discuss Slaanesh a little bit more when we talk about the...
Okay, so real quick, this is who I would liken to Slaanesh. This is Isaiah 34. And a lot of people on the channel know where I'm getting at here. So, and thorns and brambles, or this is verse 13, probably through or 15. And thorns shall come up in her palaces, nettles and brambles in the fortresses thereof. And it shall be a habitation of dragons, and a court for owls. That's interesting. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. Now, the screech owl here, okay, in Hebrew, you can go look this up. The Hebrew for is Lael or Lilith, right? Now, Lilith is not the first wife of Adam, okay? That's Jewish mysticism. That isn't true. And I would liken Lilith to Inanna. If just go look up a picture of Inanna, and you will see the resemblance of this owl-type being, right? And in the book of Enoch talks about, the women who laid with the watchers or the angels, right? The sons of God, like in Genesis 6. It says they were turned into sirens. And sirens became these bird-type women. So, very interesting. But anyways, let me finish this. The wild beasts, okay. And there shall the great owl... Now, there is a species called the screech owl, but that's not what it's talking about. This is what they put there, but the Hebrew is Lilith. You can go look it up in the Strongs. But anyways, and there shall the great owl make her nest, lay, so mating, they're mating here, right? And hatch, gather under her shadow. There shall the vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. So this is a breeding ground. So that's who I would liken Slaanesh to. Now, I understand Slaanesh is not necessarily, probably both male and female, I guess, per se. In a lot of pagan societies, the way to be God or to have apotheosis was to have both, members, per se. But anyways.
Eldar, because they done fucked up, but he, it, or whatever, is mainly about just the excess of emotions.
Yeah.
And therefore, sex is generally a large part of it. However, it's mostly pain and torture. Lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs.
BDSM.
Lots of drugs. Slaanesh gets off on everything. Extremes in happiness, extremes in sadness, extremes in pain and sadism and masochism. And of course, that goes along with the sex part of it as well. It's generally referred to with sex because of the color scheme, very purple, lots of exposed genitalia. A lot of
So if you see women with black and purple and everything like that, man, just know they probably worship Slaanesh.
models have like exposed nipples and
stuff. JK, just kidding.
That is generally the theme you go for from a physical side, but it really embodies everything, mainly pain and also the excessive amounts of emotion. So when it comes down to it, you'll find a lot of them have things like spikes or whips or any kind of BDSM style gear because it is unspeakable excess, the prince of pleasure, everything in excess to the point where it is just sheer frightening. That is Slaanesh in a nutshell. A little bit bizarre and a little hard to describe sometimes, but as we talk more about the Dark Eldar later in this video,
all I have to say is, as long as you don't bring that to me, you do you. That's all I gotta say.
You'll understand it far, far better and far more than you'd want to. Now, you might be thinking, why would anyone ever want to join Chaos? They all look horrifying.
Now, I was reading something here that there's actually, this is like a representation of 4 or 8 Chaos gods, because there's 8 things here. But I have not been able to find anything on the 8 Chaos Gods or anything like that. So, I don't know. But anyways, I just wanted to get that out there.
screwed up and just frightening things, right? Well, the thing is that, of course, one, your mind is put into the warp and the immaterium, so you can be easily swayed by chaos demons when they get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally strong people, whether they be civilians or, say, low-level guardsmen or conscripts, can be easily swayed by this and become chaos cultists and stuff, and they serve their dark gods and whatever god they personally prefer. However, and this might seem strange, chaos in their own right isn't necessarily evil. See, the warp is every manifestation of emotion and being, every soul, everything of existence. This includes all the good things. All the different chaos gods have another side to their coin. Khorne might be death, murder, slaughter, slaughter, but he's also got this weird sense of survival of the fittest.
So real quick, I'm not trying to disrespect him or whatever. I'm just looking at my phone. I use this to find verses. So that's what I'm doing when I'm looking down at this. So I do want to get that out there.
Trial by combat and honor. Khorne will never lie to you. Khorne will never stab you in the back. Khorne isn't about conniving and scheming. Khorne is about straight up mano y mano, you versus me, get in the ring, we're gonna murder each other hard right now.
And again, I would liken him to Chamash, or Kamash, however you want to say it, which is also likened to Moloch. So, basically an Ammonite and Moabite god, I do believe. So, but he was very much, and you'll see here once I bring up the demons and stuff like that, why he was all about blood and stuff like that, and why you offered up humans and stuff like that. But anyways, we'll get there.
It may not be a good thing at the end of the day, but it is that other side of the coin. Him and Tzeentch generally don't get along because Tzeentch is that conniving schemer, but he's also about the idea of hope. Where there is change for your predicament. There is change for your problem. The hope of the galaxy, the ability to bend the world to your will, the idea that your fate is not set in stone, but in reality that you control your own destiny and can control it whenever you want, the changer of ways. That is Tzeentch. And of course, Tzeentch and Nurgle hate each other because while Nurgle does represent stagnation, death, and decay, he also represents finality. An ending. The fact that you can be mentally at peace knowing that you will end and how you will end. Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle. With Nurgle, everything will rot and die, and that provides that finality, that ability that this is over. We are all...
Basically, as the, Nurgleites say, there can't be renewing without decay. But anyways.
All the same, and we will all end the same. We know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live and die and rot. And with that, it brings peace of mind. Slaanesh is a lot more simple. While they are the excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion. Slaanesh embodies happiness. Slaanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical, bam, style of pleasure, but also everything else like food and drink and air on your cheek and sunlight, the feeling, emotion and feeling. All of that is also represented with Slaanesh. So you have to ask, why are they always represented as super evil?
Which can trickle down into Nurgle for obese diseases and stuff like that, but
evil skulls and spikes on everything and want to murder everybody. I don't really got an answer for you on that one. My assumption is that because mentally humans may think worse thoughts, even if we don't act on them, and therefore they're projected in the warp more. That one's a little bit weird. I don't know. This is me spitballing right now, but I don't know. You need a super bad guy. You already got the Imperium of Man. You need somebody to be a little bit worse than them. So you got demons. Honestly, who cares? I just want to buy like a bird magician. Look at him. So cool. So combining all this together on the tabletop, chaos...
Okay, so I'll bring this up here now. So these are demons. So I know in the Bible, Jesus and all him, he's going up against demons and stuff like that. But we're never taught what are the demons, right? We're always taught that it's the fallen angels. In a way, yes, they are evil spirits, right? But the weird looking suckers, right? Who are they? Well, here. So this is verse 8, chapter 15 in the first book of Enoch. So, and now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, and because they are not born, or they are born from men and from the holy watchers, is their beginning and primal origin. These watchers are angels, right? The sons of God, Genesis 6 calls them the sons of God, right? Okay. Because they're born from men, and watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on the earth, and because they are born, in evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven shall be their dwelling, but as for the spirits of the earth, which are born upon the earth, and on earth shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger. Pay attention to that part, because there's another part I'm going to bring up. And thirst and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against women, because they have proceeded from them. Okay. Now I'm going to take this a little bit further now. You also get this in the Jasher chapter 4, right? It talks about the Genesis 6 thing. But then it also says men were mixing animals and humans and all that together, right? When God said, no, horse will mate with a horse. But anyways, so this is chapter 7, first Enoch again. And when men could verse 4, and men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against the birds, the beasts, the reptiles, fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. So this is why humans are offered up, and this is why Kamash, or Moloch, since well known by Moloch, that he requires blood, right? That's why all these gods and stuff like that require sacrifice, because it's, it says here that they hunger, right? Where is it? Yeah. So they take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst and cause offenses. So there you go. Those are the demons. But also it says they were creating hybrids, right? Of different types of animals, humans, and stuff like that. That's why in Isaiah 34 it talks about the satyrs, right? Which are men/goats. But anyways.
Chaos demons are generally very melee.
Sorry that took a long time.
Go really hard. You have lots of summoning and conjuring, tons of spells. Generally a little bit frail, but they have special saves to make them a little bit stronger. You've got giant demons and smaller demons. You got hordes of little boys and tons of big guys. Demons are as they seem. Demons. Nurgle is slow. Khorne is super scary in melee. You've got Zeech, who are far more into psychers and spellcasting, and then
also in the book of Enoch it also talks about how they exchanged enchantments in these magic spells, basically, right? And weird stuff to do all the stuff that they did, right? And to entice the women and stuff like that. And it also said they transformed into many different forms, which is interesting. So, anyways.
Unesh, who is all melee, really, really, really fast, but squishy, but in lots of hordes of tons of melee and pain damage, of course. So overall, the demons are a huge part of 40k and a massive threat to almost every single faction, with the exception of a couple. However, the big part about demons is also transferred into the other 9 Primarchs we didn't talk about, which are the Chaos Space Marines. So Horse and all the boys, all of them in the Primarchs, they have all also become Chaos Boys, and they all have their own special Chaos Legions, specializing in so many different things, just like the Adeptus Astartes, the Angels of Death, the regular Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines aren't a whole lot different than the regular Space Marines. They have the same armor, generally the same training and toughness. They just specialize in different kinds of things. And also a lot of the Primarchs have ascended into greater is it greater demons? They're demon primarchs at this point. Gigantic,
demon
horrifying
princes, right?
man-demon hybrids that are pretty awesome, if I'm going to be honest. They look really, really cool.
I do believe they're called demon princes. Or can be. And then there's greater demons, lesser demons, and stuff like that. But anyways.
Cool. But them and their associated legions that they are a part of are all kind of going out there and causing a large ruckus for everyone else. Considering...
Okay. So, of course, this is Genesis 6. Just what we were talking about, right? These are the chaos of Start days, per se, right? There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God, these watchers, right, came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. But anyways.
The raw strength and firepower of a legion of Space Marines, imagine that entire legion just converting to chaos and immediately fighting you. It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them, so I gotta write them down.
I'd say so.
But you've got the Emperor's Children with Primarch Fulgrim, loyal to...
There you go, ladies. Wouldn't you like multiple tongues? I'm sorry. Anyways.
Slanesh. These people, they are some messed up people. They're just sensory overload, tons of drugs, tons of torture.
I say so.
Fulgrim is a demon primarch right now, and oh god, I am terrified to see what that man looks like, at least on the tabletop, because Emperor's...
He's a slippery, slithering snake.
Children are not good.
I'm terrible at doing
You've got the Iron Warriors, which are kind of like opposite of the Imperial Fists, with Primarch Perturabo, I believe is his name. They're Chaos Undivided. They just kind of serve chaos in a general aspect instead of choosing one of the four. But the Iron Warriors are big on the siege and fortification, and they're basically entirely against the Imperial Fists and a major rival. Perturabo, I believe...
So I did a verse on that if you want to check the first video on them. But anyways...
is also still alive, and I'm also very interested to see what he looks like, because Demon Primarchs are badass. You got the Night...
I'm just going to focus on stuff that I haven't really covered yet, even though I did cover the Nephilim stuff or whatever, but I'm going to try to cover the stuff that I haven't covered yet from now on. But anyways.
Lords with Primarch Conrad Kurz. Conrad Kurz is dead, which is good, because he's a sick fuck. But the Night Lords are generally about terror, terrorizing people, and terrorism. They're generally about fear, and rightly so. You've got the World Eaters with Primarch Angron, still alive, also excited to see. Angron, if you think you've known an angry person, Angron is the angriest son of a bitch you will ever know. Angron removed parts of his brain that didn't make him angry, so he could be angrier. Angron. Fucker's mad. You've got the Death Guard with Primarch Mortarion. They actually have their own special codex and their own major army on the tabletop. Mortarion himself is actually one of the models, and look at him. Look at him. It's so cool looking. Of course, Nurgle based, obviously. So very slow, but very tanky. You've got the Word Bearers with Primarch Lorgar. Lorgar is, I believe, still alive. I don't know what's up with him at the current moment, but the Word Bearers are generally the people who caused all the major problems in the beginning. At least I blame them for it. They're little assholes. We got the Black...
Yeah, so, of course, if you watched the last one, the first part, Lorgar I attribute to, like, false prophet, but Erebus and Lorgar can both kind of be the false prophet. But anyways, there you go.
Legion with Primarch Horus. Get fucked, nerd. You've got the Alpha Legion with Primarch Alfarius Omegon. Chaos, I think. And then finally, you've got the Thousand Sons with Primarch Magnus the Nerd. The Thousand Sons also have their own book just with the...
So, with Alpha and Alfarius and stuff like that, that legion. The Alpha Legion. Anyways, I'm probably getting that somewhat wrong. They have the Hydra, which would be representation as the Leviathan in the Bible. So, just want to get that out there as well.
Death Guard. Magnus is also a tabletop model. He looks super cool, as you can tell, and they're all super heavily Psyker and kind of Egyptian themed. They look pretty neat, but overall, with all of these Chaos Space Marine factions, you can play as a lot of different ones, but the main ones that you can really work at are standard Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Death Guard and Thousand Sons, as they are the most fleshed out, especially on the tabletop at least. See this right here, this is a really good way to describe the Chaos Space Marines. What the thick-headed fools with their broken corpse of an emperor fail to understand is that not only can they never defeat us, but they cannot hide or flee or shield themselves from the triumph of chaos. They are finite and we are unbound, undivided. They must not err, or they shall fall to heresy. All who fall join our cause. Every imperial fool who dares to open his eyes is a willing recruit. They strive merely to hold back our fury and might, and it consumes them. Thus, you can see.
There's a little typo. That's funny. Anyways.
Chaos is inevitable. We lurk not only beyond their grasp and at their gates, we lurk within the darkness of their souls, on the tip of their tongues, in their tortured dreams. We are them, but freed from the shackles of ignorance. We are them, grown strong, evolved. We are them, but so much more. As hardcore as that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right. Chaos is basically unkillable. You could probably get rid of Space Marines, a decent amount, the Chaos Space Marines that is, but every soul that dies goes to the warp. Every Chaos soul will end up back in the warp. And depending on how hard you killed them, they will come back at some point. Every demon you banish will return at some point. Chaos is unstoppable. The warp is unending. And while maybe there is at some point some way to stop them somehow.
So I know a lot of Christians kind of wonder, why did the Emperor go after religion and stuff like that? Well, of course, in Warhammer 40k, in this universe, right, the Warhammer 40k universe, chaos, he wanted to get rid of chaos, right? And the more you worship, the more you put more energy into the warp, the bigger it's going to get, right? So this is what the Emperor was trying to stop. Unfortunately, did not work. But anyways, I do want to get that out there.
The resources to do so, the requirements to do so, are so far beyond the reaches of man and the other races at the current moment that really it's just an unstoppable force that just keeps on coming and is just barely being slowed. Chaos is by far the biggest threat. They are without number, their legions are everywhere, and yeah, they're pretty scary. So I promise we're done with humans now. Let's talk about some Xenos. So let's talk about the Eldar, or also known as...
Okay, now check this out. Okay. So Proverbs 30:13. There is a generation. Oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. Kind of like an elf. Just saying. But anyways, there is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from the earth and the needy from among men. So that's very interesting right there. But anyways.
The Eldari, which are a super hyper specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were as well responsible for the creation of Slanesh, the newest demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery on a world-ending scale. See, back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very, very ancient, millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. Every kind of pain or feeling that you have.
They were created by the old ones and stuff like that to fight the Necron and the Catan and stuff. Mostly the Necron, but anyways.
And
the Necrons, I should say. So if you don't know, the Necron became the Necrons because the Catan kind of fooled them into taking on this necrodermis, and it kind of imprisoned them, and then they pretty much imprisoned the Catan after that. So in these shards. But anyways.
Normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore, there was no shortages, everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable, and that comfort breeded this weird sedation, and that sedation...
What's that thing called in Star Trek, where it makes food? Oh, that I had it up there, but it's not there anymore. Anyways.
breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery! Debauchery!
When everything you have can be so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that
basically the 1960s
made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated, and this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks to me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the craft world Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called craft worlds.
So if you guys see my content at all, you guys know I've talked about the craft world and the New Jerusalem being like a craft world, right? So in the book of Enoch, it talks about how there were portals in it, right? Of course, in the Bible, it talks about the 12 gates, right? These 12 portals, which in a craft world has a warp gate, or not a warp gate, a webway gate. And then in the Bible, in the New Jerusalem, you know, Jesus says that in my house, there are many mansions, right? So you're able to stay in this thing. But it also says the New Jerusalem is able to ascend, right? And I'm guessing it can descend and ascend. And then in the book of Enoch, it talks about, when it talks about the New Jerusalem, at least in my opinion, it says that you see the path of the stars, that he looks up and he sees the path of the stars, which is very interesting. And lightnings and stuff like that. So, very interesting. And then it's also crystalline too, as well, right? And I guess new lore says it wasn't made out of wraith bone, crystallized or whatever, but I need to read more on that, so I'm not too sure on that. But the old lore, it was made from like psychically made of wraith bone and crystalline wraith bone and stuff like that. So there you go. And it's crazy how Games Workshop can do more research on the Bible than a lot of pastors. But anyways, I digress.
They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there.
Drukhari.
And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already,
Cormorant.
these were debauchery X10.
So there's a city called Cormorant that the Drukhari live and stuff like that. They're in deep in the webway. But anyways, he'll probably get into that.
All of this continued and it bloated until Slaanesh just burst forth.
So real quick. So this is Isaiah 62:10-12. This is almost like the webway kind of in a way. So go through the gates. Prepare ye the way of the people. Cast up the highway. Gather out the stones. Lift up the standard of the people. Behold, the Lord hath proclaimed it to the end of the world. Say ye to the daughter of Zion, behold, salvation cometh. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. And they shall call them the holy people, the redeemed of the Lord, and thou shalt be called sought out in a city not forsaken. So that city not forsaken is, in my opinion, could very well be the New Jerusalem. And it says, go through the gates, prepare ye the way of the people. And the highway, which is very interesting. We'll see. Anyways, I'll get the
All that
scripture that talks
emotion,
about them
all that
more.
mental, well, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp. All this depravity right into the warp. So what happened? Boom, Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure.
Yay.
All of them got fucked up. It was so bad that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right.
Let's give a moment of silence for Cadia. Okay.
Next to Cadia.
No. There it is.
And it is horrifying. So this Slaanesh, also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack, that birth of Slaanesh only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh, craft world or not. What about those people in the webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered by from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Mon-Kai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son.
The Mon-Kai or Monkey, however you want to say it, are humans. That's what the Eldar call the humans.
Is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stain red.
Okay, I found it. I'm sorry it took me forever. But anyways, I found it. Psalm 24, 7 through 10. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be lift up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is the King of glory? So, in that Isaiah verse right that I brought up, it talks about these highways and these gates and stuff like that, right? Jesus himself says that gates of hell shall not prevail against it, right? These would be kind of like your work gates, right? But anyways, so lift up your heads, ye gates, and everlasting doors, blah, blah, blah. And who is the King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O ye gates. Even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of Glory shall come in. Right? And then, of course, like I said, in the New Jerusalem, it's got 12 gates or 12 portals. So, with 12 angels guarding it.
Red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny. And now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craft World Eldar and living in those Craft World starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of Craft World, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each Craft World is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need
You see in a lot of like RPG stuff, Lord of the Rings, the elves fight kind of quick and agile, right? Definitely a lot different than the humans do. So there is that. But anyways, I'm going to try to keep these a little bit quicker.
And the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as the continually
Millions and millions. Okay, sorry. I had to do it.
Reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar
And the big hope is you need. But anyways.
are fast, cunning, and what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world. Why is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop, exactly what I said. Not very tanky, generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks, and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry on. It is a message even a human can understand.
Yep.
Eldar. So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
On today's episode of How Fucked Up
These are the edgelords of the Eldar.
Is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh has them, but it has them on by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off
By
doing
debauchery.
Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40k.
And crazy looking too, man. You should see some of these guys. But anyways.
These are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very
Well, I guess it does work. I mean, it seems to work, fortunately.
BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But let's Example, let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet.
For the
You get
Emperor.
invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer, and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go. You are invaded by Chaos Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach, and you get cut in half. Painful, but not the worst. The orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive.
whatever.
It's pretty rough. The Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave.
Have you seen that meme where it's, you know, it's basically.
Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and just pull out your teeth and your fingernails.
They're basically the bad guys from World War II. So, that's a good way of thinking about them. They would experiment and do all kinds of stuff to you. They didn't care.
One by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible. And this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy, a fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand, or perhaps a wonderful hat, while you are, of course, still alive and breathing. And you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity.
Yay!
And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40k.
You know, you have to find something just to end it, if you know what I mean. Find some way, somehow, some way.
They look the part, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaanesha's grip will get harder, and they will have their souls pulled away. So long as they keep doing this, Slaanesha's like, you're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards. That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari.
Yay.
They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar.
Yeah.
And Sev from Republic Commando. A quote from Mr.
get it.
Vecht.
I got it.
We are the lords of despair, masters of terror.
What a great game that was, man. I don't know. I love that game. Republic Commando. That was a good game. Tell me in the comments if you guys like that game or not.
Bread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed. Dark Eldar.
Yay.
Let's talk about the Harlequins. Clowns.
What's the matter, Andy? Don't you want to have some fun?
The Harlequins are a bizarre race of Eldar.
That's for sure.
They're demonic.
They guard the Black Library, from what I remember.
Clown performers. They're like a weird mix of Sander Cohen from BioShock and Jin from League of Legends, but in a more clown theme. They're artists of death and perfecters of their craft. They do not belong to craft worlds or any of the weird Drukhari people. They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep in the heart of the Eldar webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is the laughing god, but it's
Segarak
the Eldar's
or
laughing
Kegorok.
god? And these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns, okay? So imagine the things that an Eldar, these depraved individuals, would find funny. And this is the god of that. it's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny. They're all dying horribly. Honk, honk. They're very bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slaanesh somehow, but their main thing is guarding that black library. And the Harlequins just... they're demon clown performers. They're barely any models on the tabletop. They're good in melee. They're demon clowns. I'm not sure. I got a quote. It is too easy for an Eldar to embrace the obscene virtues of...
I can't find it. There's one who there's a verse that talks about one of the prophets, I think it was, who had a jester that was laughing at him and all the people and stuff like that, but I can't find it. So, anyways.
Chaos for Slaanesh is nothing more than a manifestation of the Eldar mind in its most wild and unconstrained form. Human morality is meaningless to the Eldar, and to the dark side of the Eldar mind, all life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment. Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered Eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange. The Harlequins, Drukhari, Eldar, they are an anomaly that make humans seem completely easy to understand in comparison. They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. They're all over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slaanesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah, Eldar.
I think they have a connection to Yanid too, don't they? Or is it just... I might be overthinking that. But, I could have swore they had a connection to Yanid as well. By the way, Yanid is like the Eldar's god of death or something like that they're trying to build up to take out Slaanesh, I do believe, something to that extent. And her name is Yanid. But I could be wrong on the god of death thing, but her name is Yanid. But anyway, that's all you need to know. And that she's being built up to take on Slaanesh.
Now, bugs.
Ma, they following me, Ma. They following me.
The bugs.
The bugs.
The Tyranids. Now, you want to talk something a little more fun, a little more simple than all this crazy Eldar shenanigans? Let's talk the Tyranids. They're bugs. Do they look like Zerg? Hell yeah, they look like Zerg. You want to know why they look like Zerg? Because they were actually supposed to be what Zerg were. Apparently, StarCraft was supposed to be a 40k game in the beginning, hence why they look so much like Eldar, Zerg, and the Imperium of Man. Like, kind of Space Marine-y, those Marines, huh? They look a little bit Space Marine-y to me.
Little bit.
Maybe. I don't know. You really fucked up on that one, Games Workshop, didn't ya? Tyranids are a giant infestation.
What a great game that was too, man. I mean, they ended up with Dawn of War or whatever being a really good game, but still, man, StarCraft was on another level, at least in my opinion. But Dawn of War is really good. And I suck at RTSs, by the way. Boy, let me tell you. I only got to mission 6 on Dawn of War. Let's just say that.
Of unfathomable proportions.
Both are great
These
games.
are giant, extremely bio-advanced hive mind organisms that are basically all about absorbing as much biomass as they possibly can to evolve and mutate to be extremely potent and powerful.
So this is going to be important from what I'm about to bring up here, not at the moment as it's trying to find it. So when Jesus is talking to the man with multiple demons in it, right? Legion. And it says, you know, the demons, right? It says, my name is Legion. But then it goes on to say, for we are many. It shows you the hive mind mentality of the demons in the kingdom of darkness. And it goes into this, right? So, this is Revelation 9. This is talking about the locusts, right? You'll hear people say, well, these are helicopters and man, no, these are, remember when I was telling you that they mixed animals and species together, right? And then in Jasher 4, it says humans were doing this as well, right? They were mixing one animal species with another, it says. That's Jasher chapter 4. I think it's verse 18 where it starts. You can check that out for yourself. And we saw in the first book of Enoch, that's what they, the Watchers and Giants were doing as well. And they're the ones who taught men to do that. But anyways, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of a woman, and their teeth as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings as it were the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, which ain't a helicopter, by the way. And their power was to hurt men 5 months, which a helicopter doesn't do. We ride helicopters now, and they're not hurting us. Okay. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. So this is where I would consider the hive tyrant, right? And also this is the Assyrian as well. The destroyer's name is, aka Ra, if you want to call him that. It calls the Assyrian in Ezekiel 32, and it calls him Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and then it starts talking about the Assyrian, right? This Assyrian is number 2. You got Satan, and then you got the Assyrian. Okay, and he's also called the destroyer. He's identified as the destroyer, and I'll have to find that verse, but he's identified as the destroyer, and I'll show you. But anyways, here you go. That's who I would liken to the Tyranids in the Bible.
Powerful and kill and eat anything in their path. They are probably the least evil faction in all of 40k because all they want to do is eat shit. They want to nom nom the entire galaxy. They hangry and we food. Also, this Tyranid hive mind has a presence in the warp. In fact, Tyranids in their own right have a massive presence in the warp. They have a thing called the shadow in the warp specifically, where when they are coming in to invade a planet, they have this weird ability to kind of cut off the warp on all the psychers on that planet. And how do you get help across the stars? Well, you need the warp because you need that for interstellar travel. So with people unable to call for help from the Tyranids, these are just easy pickings. And an entire giant Tyranid hive fleet comes out of orbit and just will
the devastation of Baal,
absorbing all that biomass and turning them and all of their other Tyranids into even more advanced monsters. They come in so many varieties too, all based on...
So here's where it identifies as this Assyrian character, right? As the destroyer. O Assyrian, the rod of mine anger and the staff in their hand is mine indignation. I will send them against the hypocritical nation, against the people of my wrath while I give them charge, to take spoil, to take prey, tread them down like mire of the street. By the way, he's not a good guy, okay? Howbeit he meaneth not so, neither doth his heart think so. Ready? But it is in his heart to destroy and cut off nations, not a few. So it identifies him as the destroyer. Exodus 3, right, when they're going through the Exodus, right, in the Passover scenario, it says that you put the blood on the doorpost, right, and the destroyer, he says, you will not suffer the destroyer, which is in Egypt. And then you'll see the Assyrian is also called Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And who's the king god of Egypt? Ra.
On what is important. Tiny little ripper swarms for scouting and having little dudes eat people up.
He's also mentioned in the Isaiah 14 in the Lucifer scripture. And I believe he's Lucifer's father. Now, as you guys know on my channel, Lucifer is a man. It literally calls him a man. Verse 16, Isaiah 14, verse 16, literally calls him a man. Also, the reason why I say he's the son of this Assyrian character is because it says, Hillel ben Shahar, right? Or son of the morning, Lucifer, son of the morning, right? And Shahar is a Canaanite god. And Satan is not the son of a Canaanite god. He is like the main god, right? So, Lucifer is not Satan, right? And it literally calls him a man. And Satan's not a man. So, anyways, there you go. Sorry that took
the
longer than it
Hormigons, Termagants, and Genestealers, all the way to the Hive Guard and the Exocrines and the Swarm Lord, to Hive Tyrants and their giant battle fleets, and even something as crazy as the Hierophant Bio-Titan. The Tyranids come in all forms and sizes depending on what they require. They are extremely good at anti-biological weaponry. There is no way you can plague them or blight them. They have extremely strong armor, carapaces and such. Tyranids are nigh perfect organisms and are pretty spooky when it comes down to how they handle all of their genetic material. Keep feeding them, they'll keep evolving. They keep on creating new horrifying organisms to spread across the galaxy. And you want to know what the most terrifying part of the Tyranids is? We might be surrounded. There have been like around 6 or 7 Tyranid hive fleets. Behemoth, Kronos, all these different kinds of hive fleets. And they've all arrived in the galaxy from different points.
It's interesting, as you said, Kronos, because you'll see Kronos, Saturn, Osiris, right? Geez. There's another name he goes by. I believe these are all Lucifer, right? That first world king character. And then, of course, Baal, who is Zeus, Marduk, Set, right? They're all the Storm Lord, right? And he rebels against Lucifer. So, in my opinion, they're all telling the same story, right? According to their culture and their God, right? Now, I believe, of course, the Bible's telling us, it's the only one that gives us the 3D viewpoint of what's going on, right? And it's the only one that says this isn't a good thing. But anyways.
Different sections of the Milky Way galaxy have had different Tyranids come through. And that is horrifying. Because as far as we know, we could just be surrounded on all sides by Tyranids. The only reason you may not hear a whole lot about Tyranids is because it's a little bit hard to have a bunch of story off of one hive mind genocidal monsters. All these giant bugs swarming in, killing and eating everybody and evolving. Oh, I mean, as cool as there are, there's some cool characters, the Swarm Lord, Old One-Eye. You can't really have a whole bunch of major character-based stories around them. As awesome as they are, they're simple. They want to eat you. They want to eat you and absorb your biomass. They are simple bugs. If you want something a little more complex, talk Genestealer cults.
I can have all the pot I want, I get around faster than walking, and wherever I need a seat, I can just sit on my balls.
Genestealer cults are a special brand of Tyranid that can slowly infect themselves into different kinds of society. And by infecting them, they can rise up to where they all pray and believe in these regular humans, pray and believe into their Tyranid hive mind gods. And these brood lords and I think they're called patriarchs all can turn an entire world all based into Genestealers. And these are called Genestealer cults. An entire hive world of the Imperium can be turned into nothing but servants to the Tyranid masters just by infecting them and screwing with their genetic code a little bit. They also have this cool like Mad Max look, which is really neat. They are definitely one of the bigger threats to the Imperium besides Chaos. I keep saying biggest threat to the Imperium. They're up there though, because you, dingus, stepped on a bug in middle school. Asshole. There is a cancer eating at the Imperium. With each decade, it advances deeper, leaving drained, dead worlds in its wake.
There ain't much I can bring to this one. Yeah.
Or this abomination has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale. And all we can do is to try to stop the swarms of bioengineer monsters it unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salvage our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us, it must know us as nothing but prey. Tyranids, They're cool. But are they as cool as the orcs?
Every screen's gone red. That means I'm super fast.
Orcs, 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 orcs. I fucking love orcs. So, yes, the green monsters, the green tide, the green skins. These orcs, they are in fact a race in 40k. The orcs are as exactly what you expect them. They have archaic weapons, they're big boys, they have axes,
And they're in the Bible as well. And I'll show you. But anyways.
they got big old teeth and they want to kill everything, and there are so many of them. The only reason they haven't taken over the entire galaxy is they can't stop murdering each other.
Okay. Joel 1:6. For a nation has come up upon my land, strong and without number. Now pay attention to this part. Whose teeth are the teeth of a lion. Go look up a lion's teeth. They got those huge fangs, right? Going down and up. And hath the cheek teeth of a great lion. So, go look up a picture of a lion and you'll see what it's saying there. This isn't normal, right? This isn't a normal human thing. In my opinion, these are orcs.
Orcs are so cool. Orcs don't have philosophy. Orcs don't have existential crisis. What matters is who's the biggest orc. You listen to that guy because he's the biggest orc.
And it says, for a nation who's come up on land strong and without number, just like the orcs in Warhammer 40k.
Big orc knows best. You win through the power of imagination. Of all the races I have battled throughout the galaxy, the orc is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, care little for strategic gains, and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? As an orc, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying the life you're given. Your whole life and job and purpose is to get up and beat each other to death because you can. The biggest orc is the man who understands everything. He is the boss. And orcs have this really weird, big, dumb, stereotype British accent, which is just hilarious to me. Those are orcs. You
Cockney.
fight. You like to fight. Your whole purpose is to fight. You wage war.
I believe that's what it's called, or at least in our world, it's called the Cockney or something like that. The accent that they have or whatever. I do believe. I could be wrong.
Because you want to wage war. You got your boss over there, and you better listen to the boss. Because if you don't listen to the boss will squish you and make you an example for the other orcs. And then you can't fight because orc dead. And orc dead can't fight because the orc dead. Orcs. They scrap together machines out of parts that don't make any sense, and because they believe, they have the mental imagination that machine will run, it'll run. If that machine's out of gas, you're driving that machine with your fellow orcs, and the biggest orc is behind the wheel, and you run out of gas, some orc behind you is like, oh, Zog, we're out of gas. And the big orc is like, no, we're not. I filled the fucking gas tank up earlier. And all the other orcs are like, oh yeah, you did do that. And then you turn the fucking mech back on and it works again. Does it have gas? Probably not, but it works. The power of imagination. They paint things red because it makes them think they goes faster. They paint things purple because it's the sneakiest color. You wanna know why? You ever seen a purple orc? Didn't fucking think so. Orcs are also ancient as hell. They're back in the Eldari time frame.
The Quarks.
Back then they were called Quarks, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent. Now they're just orcs, and they're big, dumb, and they smack things. But they're pretty spooky. They're not very well armored, but they hit really hard. And it's called the Green Tide because there are so many orcs. There are about as many orcs as there are Tyranids. Maybe more. Who knows? But they keep on, murdering each other, so it's not too bad of an issue. Orcs are entirely comic relief. Their stuff is slapped together. That makes no sense. Their vehicles don't work the way they're supposed to, but they work because they think it works, because they imagine that it works. Orcs care only about who is the biggest orc, and they will follow the biggest orc. And then if they want to be the biggest orc, they'll challenge the biggest orc. And then when they go and they issue a wah is just...
I'm kind of interested to see what Trench Crusade's comic relief is, or even if they have one. That would be very interesting.
war in Orc, they murder everybody and everything in this giant tide of green orcs who are just excited to be hitting something. They don't care that they're hitting Eldar or the Imperium or Tau or anyone in between. They're just so they get to beat shit up. That's orcs. And on the tabletop, they are a total coin flip and they're really fun. I have never met a salty orc player. I have never met someone who plays orcs and is ever just a bad guy or that guy. Orc players have this kind of fun to them because when you play them, you are completely submitting yourself to RNG. So here's the thing. Guardsmen, Imperial Guardsmen, when they shoot, they roll a dice, and on a 4 up, they'll hit their target. They have a 50% chance. Space Marines, pretty good. They hit on a 3 or higher because they're well trained. Adeptus Custodians, they hit on 2s because they're just super well trained. Orcs, they hit on a 5 or higher.
Oh, geez.
But if they roll a 6, they get to make another shot with anything, from the dinkiest pistol to the biggest rocket launcher. It doesn't matter. Half of their stuff will blow up on a whim. One of their medics, if you roll a 1 to heal someone, you fuck up your surgery and you just kill an orc. They're so wacky and silly. But the thing is if you roll well, you roll high, and you keep rolling high, you are going to crush people. And if you don't, you lose. I mean, that's what you get when you play orcs. That's what happens when you play orc. It's a coin flip. Which is why you can't be a salty bitch when you play orcs, because...
Was that Yarrick in the background there? I don't want to go back, but...
Things
anyways.
won't go your way. It's just the roll of the dice. You're playing a dice game. But if you're going to have fun, and you want to be stupid, and you want to be silly, you're going to play some damn orcs. But on the opposite side of the fun part of this, let's talk about the Necrons. The Necrons are spooky, scary skeletons and very grimdark again. They have a much more fleshed out lore than before. Back in the day, they were just undead Egyptian space terminators, and they still look that way, but now they actually have a story. So way back in the day, you had the Necron tier. Kind of see a theme here: Eldari, Eldar, Krork, Orc, Necron, Necron tier. So the Necron tier were this race of generally kind of shitty people. Not because they were personally shitty, but because their lives were awful. They were ill-fated to a horrible existence of like radiation and a terrible planet they lived on, and everything just really sucked. Being a Necron tier was just really depressing. They really were looking for immortality. They were extremely reliant on the hope that they would eventually find the key to living forever and to stave off this horrible nature that they were thrust upon them, and therefore they could become the most dominant race in the galaxy. And they found this group. They're called the Old Ones. Imagine them kind of like the Forerunners in Halo or the Xel'Naga in StarCraft, right?
Okay. So, the Bible talks about these Raphaim, right? So, Rapha, this is Strong's number H7497, Rapha, inhabitant of area east of Jordan. The proper name, but this is what the Strong's Concordance says: a giant, Rapha. Raphaims are from Rapha in the sense of invigorating a giant. Giant, Rapha, Raphai. Let's go to see the Rapha. What does Rapha mean? Check this out: to heal, to mend, to cure. Cure, cause to heal, physician, repair, thoroughly, make whole, or Rapha, a primitive, properly to mend. So we saw that it was invigorating a giant. So these are the quote-unquote undead, right? And I'm going to bring up another scripture that's going to prove something to that extent. But
these Old Ones were these strong, pretty much omnipotent beings. And they, of course, knew the key to immortality. So the Necrons went to them and said, please, show us your ways. And the Old Ones said, piss off. Not really. They were a lot more humble about it, but they did not want to share their secret of immortality with the Necrons. The Necrons, of course, took this very well and waged war with them. kind of under this united banner.
Come on.
The Necron different dynasties didn't really like each other, but under this one man, the Silent King, he thought the best way to unite his race was to do this giant war with the Old Ones out of spite for them keeping the secret of immortality to them. This was known as the War in Heaven, and this is actually like a multi-stage war, because during this war in heaven.
All right. So Job 26:5. Dead things are formed from under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof. Hell is naked before him. Remember, I was telling you who the destroyer is, right? Ready? And destruction hath no covering. So, very interesting.
Heaven, they discovered the star gods, a whole new race of people known as the Catan, or the Catan. These star gods were also very much like Old Ones, almost omnipotent beings, and they too had the key to immortality. And so the Necrons went.
So, the Catan, I would liken to what I would call these 7, quote-unquote, Satans, right? But Satan is the top dog. You have the Assyrian, like I mentioned, right? And then in the book of Enoch, it talks about these 5 chief ones. And then in Revelation, let me bring that up before I let him talk a little bit.
Went to them and said, hey, can you help us fight off the Old Ones? Can you help us kill these Old Ones, you, the Catan? And the Catan said yes. And in fact, we can help provide you with the immortality you so desperately seek. So the Silent King of the Necrons decided to make a pact with the Catan to allow them to accept this generous gift of immortality upon.
Okay. Which is in a way what Satan is doing, right? But anyways, Revelation 17, 10, and 11. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, right? Now remember, the book of Enoch mentioned 5 of them, right? And it also mentions the son of the serpent, who I believe is Lucifer. But you'll see, so, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and another is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Ready? And the beast that was, who I believe is Lucifer, I do believe Lucifer's the beast of Revelation, right? And I've always said the beast is a lot older than what people think. Oh, what did I do? I did something. Okay. And the beast that was is not, but he was, right? He was back in the day, but he's not. Even he is the 8th, but is of the 7. So he has the same authority as the 7 do, right? And in the book of Enoch, I think it's chapter 69 or chapter 69, I do believe it is. And then at the end, when it talks about the 5, these 5 chief ones, it talks about the son of the serpent right at the end of it. So, in my opinion, it's talking about these 7 Satans, right? These 7 chief ones. But anyways, that's who I would consider the Catan. They went way longer than I wanted.
But this, of course, had been a horrendous trap.
It's gonna be a long video.
And the Necrons were dragged in chains to this biotransference where their flesh was stripped from them, replaced with nothing but a metal hollow shell as their souls were ripped.
Your necrodermis is showing.
From their body and fed to the Catan. And the Catan fattened up. They got chonk on the souls of the Necrons. As this was their plan all along, they consumed the flesh and souls of the Necron tier and turned them all into unwilling robotic slaves just to serve their will. And then
I wish I knew how to animate like that, That would be cool. Anyways.
With their new-founded Necron army, they pointed their guns at the Old Ones, and the Catan continued their domination of the stars and their genocide, complete and full genocide of these Old Ones. The Old Ones did their best to stave it off. They even created other races, the Eldari and the Orcs, to try to fight off the horrifying Necron army and the Catan above them. But there was absolutely no possible chance for them. And the Old Ones were absolutely extinguished across the galaxy. Their entire race completely removed. Full-on 100% genocide. However, during all this, the Catan so just infatuated with their victory, started fighting each other for fun, for sport, and for small differences, doesn't matter. The Catan, with these overpowered people, they're going to eventually hit each other at some point. And as they began just menially fighting each other, the Eldari and the Orcs actually started pushing on the Catan's borders a little bit, giving them a little bit of a run for their money. And as this continued, this is when the Silent King, who retained his consciousness, decided to leap into action and start a full-scale revolt against their Catan masters. And this revolt was bloody, as the entire Necron army was surged off to destroy these star gods. They were able to, just after suffering horrendous losses, were able to turn the tide of the war. And they took these Catan and they blasted them, because as these star gods are unkillable, they were able to break them into thousands of shards and entrap them in giant stasis vaults to now actually be slaves to the Necrons. And with the Necrons having the entirety of their old gods enslaved to them, they realized that soon their race was about to be attacked by the overcoming new races, the Eldari and the Krorks. And so what they did is they retreated into giant stasis tombs in order to preserve their energy and their strength for when one day they would be reawakened and they would be able to rule the galaxy that was rightfully theirs. And then some dingus, a Mechanicus guy, diddled with a green console, and now the Necrons are back, and they see all these primitive races on their lawns, and they think, get the fuck off of it. The Necrons are back, super advanced, and they are here to reclaim the galaxy that they so rightfully believe is theirs. Now, on a tabletop, they're a lot like that. Tons of undead Egyptian skeleton robots that when they die, they just get right back up because they keep on reanimating. Hard to kill, tons of crazy stuff. You can use the Catan themselves as units to fight with. It's pretty cool. The Necrons are one of the three major events in 40k. The Horus Heresy, the Fall of the Eldar, and the Awakening of the Necrons are all pretty substantial events. And the Necrons themselves are pretty...
So I'm just letting it go because I already made this a lot longer than I wanted it to be. So, but I do got to stop it every now and then for copyright. So,
pretty dang cool as well. Here's a good quote from a wonderful Dawn of War game. Lucky creatures, as long last you have found the tranquility of death. I was like you once, clinging to life and blind to the truth. When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear. Deep in these catacombs, I was remade. Here, my brethren slumbered for eons while the living grew like weed. My Lord knew this day would come. He had plans for us all. We would purge this world once more. So come, poor victims of life. We will grant you tranquility in these crypts. Kronos will be a tomb world once more. Necrons are also pretty smug. Trazen the Infinite especially, a little dickhead. But speaking of dickheads, last race, let's talk the Tau.
We made a fucking Wookiee.
The exact formation of the Tau Empire is not entirely understood. However, a long time ago, many thousands of years ago, in the 40k world that is, some Imperial navigation vessels were going around through different areas, and they saw a primitive race, blue people, smacking each other with sticks and stones. They thought, nah, dumb Xenos race, who gives a shit, and they bailed. Then this giant warp storm occurred right in that major area, unable to be breached. Then, once that warp storm 6,000 years later subsided, hello, those little sticks. Well, they decided to actually have no war of any kind and all just unite together under one flag of the Tau.
And they became Gundams. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. But anyways, so Revelation 16:13. What if I told you aliens are in the Bible, but they're not who you think they are, at least in my opinion. So Revelation 16:13. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs. Do you see these grays look like frogs, don't they? Especially their hands and their eyes and stuff. But anyways, come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits of devils, working miracles. Ready? This is the key part here. This is why I think it's talking about these aliens, right? Which go forth unto the kings of the earth and the whole world to gather them together to battle of the great day of God Almighty. I just went over what the day of the Lord is, right, in the short, the Exterminatus short. So if you want to check that out, it's in the short section. But yeah, so these 3 unclean spirits are doing miracles, but they're also going to the kings of the earth. Well, what are these aliens doing? These these greys and stuff. They're going to the governments of the world, giving them technology and all that. For what? In my opinion, to battle, right? You hear Ronald Reagan, his speech, right? If an outside source came in and boy, we would all unite, right? I wonder who he was talking about. Yeah. But anyways, I digress.
Empire, and now they have gigantic starships and Gundam robots and lasers and railguns and mechs, and they are here to ruin your day for the greater good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of
Them fish heads.
homogenous group. All species can go underneath the banner of the greater good. The greater good is their idea of the fundamental increase and help of all. In fact, they are most likely the most like the Covenant in Halo, where they have the overarching prophets, being the ethereals, who are actually kind of dicks and like to pull at strings a little bit, but then you have all these different races directly underneath them, and they all work together in this big group.
I'll save the other part to that for the revamped video of this. So I won't bring that up now.
As this large, foreboding race that tries to spread their weirdly pseudo-religious influence across the galaxy. The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity him, his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and equate him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. That is generally the Tau. And if you're kind of wondering like what their mainly big shtick is, well, they're all about big robots and mechs. They have laser rifles and rail guns. They got giant mechs with tons of missile pods and heavy rail rifles and rail guns and burst cannons and ion accelerators and void shields and all this stuff. And that is generally what the Tau's all about. But you're probably thinking, Bricky, this doesn't sound that evil. This doesn't sound very grim, dark Warhammer. And you'd be right. The Tau Empire really don't have that much of a horrifying, grim-dark style like everybody else. They're much more younger, new age thing. In fact, they're probably a lot less evil and a lot even better than they are now back in the day because they liked having like that good guy faction. But a lot of us who really like the dark, depressing style of Warhammer didn't really like it that much. So, see, the Tau get a lot of hate, and a lot of that hate isn't necessarily unjustified. It's mainly from a tabletop perspective, but as you can see from all the visuals I've shown you recently, they don't really fit in the 40k universe very well. They lack that super dark, dramatic, kind of high gothic level the Imperium has. They don't have the weird kind of like grungy stuff that Chaos or say the Orcs do. And the Necrons and the Eldar have their own specific style as well. The Tau really do look like something out of Gundam. And while that isn't necessarily a bad thing, it does definitely not fit too well. There's that. There's also the tabletop problem. In tabletop, Tau are horrible at melee combat, but exceptionally good at ranged combat. So they blast everyone from really, really far away, and they have a million rules to make it so that it's nearly impossible for you to get into melee combat. So it basically just forces you to bottleneck the game into one specific gameplay style, which is gun to gun. And if you're doing gun to gun, they're gonna win every time, because they're the Tau, and the Tau are really damn good at shooting. So it's one of those things that make the Tau generally rather hated, and a lot of different reasons for that, both from style and such. But this is actually one of the things I wanted to end this video with, is that the Tau, while they have their issues, you should not be discouraged from playing them. I'll make plenty of Tau weeaboo jokes, of course I will, but it's all generally in good fun. Anyone who legitimately doesn't want you to play a faction is an idiot, and you shouldn't be giving them the time of day. You pick what you think is cool and what you like. In Warhammer, especially now, factions get better and they get worse. They grow and then they fall. you should only be playing what you think is cool. You like the look, you like the models. If you're talking tabletop, that is what you should be going for every time, is what you think is badass, because things change all the time. But the universe of Warhammer has so much going for it. Every faction
That's for
has
sure.
something interesting, every character has a story, and there's a million stories to be told. The universe is vast and exciting, and while it is dark, depressing, and horrible, that is the damn charm. And out of everything I've told you in these two videos, if anything you could take away is the reason why so many of us are so into this series and why we like it so much. Because with so much variety, such an expansive universe, and so much that can be done, you can find yourself having a pretty great time. Thank you so much for watching this video.
All right,
I hope it's
guys.
been informative to you. If you
All right, so we're going to end it there, guys. I just want to thank everyone for supporting my channel. We're almost to 700. Need 5 more as of today. And I just want to thank you guys. You guys have been awesome. You've been supporting the videos. You've been supporting the shorts lately. The last 2 broke 1,000 views on the shorts, which is the first time in a very long time that I've had shorts break 1,000. So thank you guys. You guys have been killing it, so thank you. But anyways, I want to thank everyone who liked the video. And if you disliked the video, thank you for at least giving me a chance. But anyways, you guys have a wonderful day.